Traversing the realm of darkness, the paranormal guys are on a quest to find the answers to the hard questions of where the normal meets the paranormal and the weird, and where the natural meets the unnatural. So grab your holy water, call your mama, and get ready for the Paranormal Guys podcast.
Bada boom,
Bada bang.
That's right. We are back. The Paranormal Guys are back. It's February 21st, 2024. And we're going to be having on tonight, whenever. We are going to have Mr. Ben Harl on today about talking about the afterlife. I did a documentary with him, Steve. He reached out to me and asked me, hey, would you like to be part of this little movie I want to put together about the afterlife? And I'm asking a lot of people questions, what they believe the afterlife is. And I jumped at it. I said, yeah, of course, duh. So we're going to be talking to him next. But until then, how's everything going, Steve?
Everything's going really cool, Neil. I have no complaints. The weather's been extremely nice lately.
Yeah, it has. It really has. The other day was it yesterday? It was in the 50s, and which is very odd for the Chicagoland area. I mean, they said that it was going to be an El Nino type year. So it's actually pretty nice out here. I can't complain. I've been going for walks, Steve, every night this week around like 7 or 8 o'clock. So make sure I go for that little walk. Oh, listen to this. Okay. So I went for this walk. Okay. And I'm coming back, and out of one of the houses in the gangway, whatever, comes out this huge, and I mean huge coyote.
A big coyote?
Like staring at me. Yeah, this
Wow.
coyote.
Did you go beep beep?
No, I didn't go beep, beep, no. No. But the thing was, I swear to God, this thing was huge. Like I started thinking it was a wolf. And I'm like,
that'd be nice if it was.
No.
They're majestic.
At me, man.
It'd be like, it's coming to say hi. Mm-hmm. No, but it was a big coyote, like a fat coyote? Like, do you mean big as in fat or big as in like
thick?
Husky.
Okay. So this thing, at first I'm like staring at it, and then it darts in between another house, and I'm like, all right, it's gone. So I continue to walk, and then all of a sudden it comes around again and goes out to the sidewalk and is like staring at me again. And I'm like this, oh man, I hope this coyote doesn't think I'm lunch or dinner or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I ain't gonna lie to you, I got a little nervous, man. And I'm walking backwards, and I'm keeping my eye on this thing because I noticed when I was walking forward, it would start moving forward too.
Were you walking your dog or walking alone?
No. My dog won't go for walks in the dark. It hates the dark, man. It hates the dark. Dog's a free cat.
So you're alone walking at night, like you shouldn't be. And then a coyote is like hunting you down, and you do everything. You got to take out your phone, and you start like making some content for a really cool like, okay, folks, this coyote's chasing me.
Or what would have been a smart idea? Here's a smart idea. What I should have done is I should have got a recording off of YouTube of like coyotes in heat and played
it would try to mount you.
Oh, would it chase me down?
It might hump you like it's Wednesday.
Oh my Lord. So that would have been a bad idea. So if this happens again, I'm not to look for things like that on YouTube, like mating calls.
No, don't do that. That probably attracted it.
Oh, all right. I'm just gonna, man. Thank you.
What happened though? Like,
so eventually, I did get home. I did get home, and I was like, man, that was a big coyote, man.
Do you think
it really was? It was very large because usually the coyotes that I see, especially in the February month, the month of February, are usually pretty skinny.
Yeah,
and they're small, but this one looked thick.
I have a theory. That theory is that your neighbor is feeding the coyote, and he can't tell the difference between you and the neighbor. He just sees something walking on two legs, and you're like, oh, you got food for me? Somebody's feeding him. And that's why he's big. And he's it's kind of dangerous because he'll get domesticated, not really domesticated fully, but like he'll start like not being afraid of people.
That's the other thing is I noticed that, you remember coyotes used to be afraid of people?
Yeah.
And now they're not. Like, I mean, this thing was staring at me like, I was lunch.
Look at the world. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm not afraid of you guys. You're on your way out.
Yeah. I was like, wow,
Coyotes are
man.
taking over.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Wow.
So anything weird happened with you lately?
Like getting hunted by canines
Coyote?
or anything? No.
Alien? Something?
Um Nothing weird is going on. Everything's nice. I did want to like tell everybody about the stuff you and I do behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and how we prepare for our show because it does take a lot of planning and time to do our best as the paranormal guys.
Best we can, man. Do the
And
best we can.
more for the people who are watching, you might be able to hear a little bit of what's going on. I got a little clip of you and I preparing for today's episode, and I thought I'd share it with everybody.
Oh, okay. Please do. Please.
Here you are.
Just for
Yeah.
any clips that you're going to see, anything visual, please go to our YouTube channel. For you listening on all the streaming platforms, go ahead and listen to it. But if you want to see the cool content that like Steve or myself are going to put up, like in our news, feel free to switch over to the YouTube channel and check out the really cool stuff. We put a lot of hard work into it so that you, our beloved audience, can enjoy this kind of stuff.
And for you, beloved audience, here's a clip of Neil and myself preparing for today's episode.
Hmm. Holy, you know what? Why would somebody do that? Allow somebody to kick them in their genitals like that? What does that prove?
It's for the views. It's for the lulls.
Man, if we started preparing like that before
We
we got
did. That
started,
was us.
that was us. You
Yeah.
remember that lady said that we had
We were
a
monks in our past life. You think that's what we did in our past life? I
kick
do
each
that.
other in
I'd
the
kick
balls.
you.
Yeah, kick each other
Yeah.
in the balls.
I can see us doing that. That's called iron crotch kung fu, by the
I don't
way.
know about iron, man. I think that's missing crotch. I think that's missing crotch.
Do you think that's what they do? Is they get it cut out and then they're like, "Oh, look, we're so tough."
I don't know. Maybe they. I don't know, dude. I mean, but I'm not doing that. I don't know about you. Don't try to get me into this game. I'm not playing. I'm not playing that game. Hell no. So let's go on to a little bit of news. And like I was talking about earlier, is that I was talking about the coyote probably in heat. I'm going to have a really cool news article. So let's
You
start
got
out
to
with
do the
news.
news.
Are you ready, Steve?
I'm ready.
Are you sure?
Positive, 100%.
Positively positive?
Yes.
All right, well, here we go. All right. This is a very interesting story. Let me put up the little picture that we have here. Tell me if you like it. All right. This story comes from the Sunset Vista Trailer Park in Magna, Utah. Oh, okay.
Nice.
Dave was ecstatic when his wife Sarah announced that she was pregnant. That's always a very nice thing. They eagerly prepared for the arrival of their little bundle of joy. Painting the nursery and picking out tiny clothes. However, as Sarah's pregnancy progressed, that's the lady on our left here,
Okay.
they noticed some peculiar changes. She had cravings for berries and raw meats skyrocketed. And her feet seemed to be growing at an alarming rate. One day during a routine ultrasound, the technician did a double take and exclaimed, Sir Dave, can I talk to you for a second? You might want to see this. To both of their shock, the ultrasound revealed a fuzzy silhouette with unusually large feet. Dave's jaw dropped as he stammered. Is that a Bigfoot? Dave exclaimed. But Dave also remembered about a year ago his wife got lost in the forest near their trailer park in Utah and remembered hearing a loud, unusual type scream. He remembered an unusual type scream. Dave also asked, she got lost of hearing an unusual type of scream, and the wife was looking disheveled as she exited the forest. Dave asked what happened. His wife didn't want to talk about it. After a moment of stunned silence, they burst into laughter, realizing it was just a glitch in the machine. But from there on, they affectionately joked that their baby was going to be the hairiest, most adventurous little one on the block. And when their daughter was born with a full head of hair and adorable chubby cheeks, they lovingly nicknamed her Sasquatch Sarah as a nod to the hilarious ultrasound mishap. What do you think of that, Steve?
The ultrasound was wrong?
Yeah, it was actually a human. They just had a little bit of a glitch in it. Yeah. But
that's what they think.
But he remembers hearing like some kind of scream coming from the forest about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That sounds suspicious to me.
Yeah, that's man. If I heard something like that or something like that,
and then his wife stumbled out of the forest.
Yeah, and his wife came out of the forest,
and she was stumbling.
Well, she was disheveled. It says in the article she was disheveled.
It could have been her and Billy Bob, though. That sounds like could be Billy Bob.
You know, like from the other trailer park down the block.
Yeah,
you never know. You know, it could have been. You never know. But that's the news that I have today. Is there, did a man possibly think that his wife got impregnated by a Bigfoot? But then it came up as that, it was just a problem on the ultrasound, Steve.
Well, that's a good happy ending, I should say.
Ooh, is that a happy ending? Let's ask the viewers. I can't help myself.
I know. Oh.
So what do you got for us, Steve?
I have some news. It's about a lovely couple who's been married for quite some time. They've been married for 52 years. Let me put up an article for you. And, basically, folks, it's the wrong video.
You like the crotch video again, huh?
That might have been happening, too. She might have been kicking him. But here's my news. Woman allegedly tries to kill her husband over a postcard from a woman he dated 60 years ago.
What?
That's right. Gather around. Because I got a story for you that's so out there you're going to think I made it up. But I swear it's as real as the nose on your face, assuming you haven't had any work done, Neil. In the sunny, sometimes swampland paradise of Florida, where the bazaar is just an average Tuesday, we have a tale of love, jealousy, and, well, senior citizens going rogue. Picture this. A 71-year-old woman, let's call her Bertha because, well, that's her name. She decides that after 52 years of marriage, it's high time to spice things up a bit. And how does she do it? By assaulting her husband. And
nice.
Why? Because he received a postcard from an old flame in Turkey. Yeah, you heard right. A postcard. Did you even know that they made those anymore?
I no, you actually got a good point. I didn't know.
No, it wasn't just any old flame, Neil. It was an old flame from 60 years ago. 60 years ago. 6 decades. We're talking love ember that's been cooling off since Eisenhower was in the White House, Neil. And what does our dear Bertha do? She tries to smother her husband with a pillow, probably a My Pillow, over the postcard. I guess some people really don't like to get mail. But it gets better. This geriatric episode of Romances Go Wrong left the hubby with more than just a bad case of pillow face. We're talking bruises, lacerations, and even bleeding bite marks. She went crazy. I don't know how he survived, but according to the cherry on top of this crazy Sunday, Bertha might have also decided to mark her territory, if you catch my drift.
Oh, what?
The attorney admitted that she urinated on him. And I suppose when you're out of arguments, that's one way to claim victory, right? Now, here's the kicker. Despite all this,
Oh, that wasn't before?
no, despite all of this, the husband, we'll call him Romeo, is trying to get Juliet out of the slammer. He's even denying the smothering. I'm fine, he says. I'm fine. After being turned into a human chew toy and a pee pad. That's not fine. That's Stockholm Syndrome with a side of dementia. So what do you think of that?
So when I look at the article, I'm like, she's 71 and it happened 60 years ago. So she was 71. I mean, 11 years old at the time. Why would she be angry? She was just a kid when her husband was dating this. If you pull up that article one more time, it's going to say 60 years ago. It says a 71-year-old Florida woman was accused of assaulting her husband at 52 years over a postcard.
Yeah.
That in itself is weird, you know?
Yeah.
And it winds up with a golden shower and everything like that. Oh, my Lord in heaven.
What the
heck?
I don't know.
How do you think he felt? How do you think he felt, during that process? Well, I'm going to tell you how he felt.
He felt like he'd been married for 52 years. That's the sound his wife made on the attack.
That's how he felt.
He's like, out. He's like, oh, Bigfoot. And she's like,
it's more like, oh my God, it's a big Sasquatch.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
we're getting too crazy now.
Much like Florida, love is unpredictable, Neil, and sometimes dangerous, and often wetter than you'd like. And maybe, just maybe, it's a good idea not to let those postcards lie. Sleeping postcards, just let them lie.
Yeah, just let them lie. Or burn them, throw them in a fire, man. For all you guys out there and girls out there, if you had a past love and this and that, it was something that your wife or your husband's going to get mad about, throw that stuff in the garbage.
Throw it out and burn it and
get rid of that stuff.
You're married.
Yeah. That's like the same stupid thing, if people all of a sudden they leave phone numbers on their phones of past girlfriends or boyfriends. That's just dumb. Eventually your loved one's going to get into your phone, stupid.
Whatever.
Whatever. That stays on mine.
No, it's gone. I just deleted them all right now. Because I love you, baby.
Because I love you. Well, that's all the news that we have for today. Next up is Mr. Ben Harl. And like I said, we're going to be talking about the Afterlife and the documentary that he did. And I was very, very happy to be able to interview him and also be interviewed by him about what Neil thought about what the Afterlife is. So stand by. And as usual, boys and girls. Boo.
Boo.
Hey there. If you're on the hunt for some captivating podcasts about the supernatural, paranormal, aliens, or anything that sends shivers down your spine, the Paranormal Guys podcast has you covered. Find them on various streaming platforms, and don't forget to check out them on YouTube channel at Graveside Paranormal. Happy listening, and boo.
And now, back to the Paranormal Guys podcast.
All right, we're back, Steve. Thank you for all those messages from Graveside Paranormal and the Paranormal Guys podcast. Those messages are very important to all you great listeners out there. And I'm hoping that all the listeners are going to really pay attention tonight or today, however you are going to listen to your streaming. It'll be going off, always off after 12 o'clock every other Wednesday. And very, very important, if you also have us on YouTube, you're able to see me and Steve in all our glory and our sexiness. You're able to see us. And you're also able to see the next video that I'm going to be showing you as a presentation, as a clip for the movie Afterlife. We are bringing in Mr. Ben Harl in a minute. First, before we bring him in, Steve, we're going to talk about a little bit about Afterlife. It's a story about what we think is the afterlife. each and every one of us has a different thought or an impression about what happens to us after death. Some people believe that maybe we just fade away like the wind. Or some of us just think that maybe there is a heaven, maybe there is a hell. What is the afterlife? Well, Mr. Ben Harl really he contacted me about 2.5 years ago, and he came to my house and he interviewed me, Steve. And we talked about this. He recorded. He had one of his cameramen out here. Very nice guy. I think he was here for a couple hours. And I told him some very detailed stories and very personal stories. I think this is going to be a really, really important film for everybody to watch. If you're really deep into thought about really wondering what is the afterlife and how it means to you, the individual. So I'm going to be first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video really quick here, and then I'm going to bring in Mr. Ben Harl.
What does it mean to die? Death is something that every living being shares. It's the common denominator that links all of us together. There's no magic pill or magic potion to reverse the end to our physical existence. For some of us, our inevitable demise frightens us. It represents the ultimate unknown. We close our eyes, our bodies go limp, and we are no more. Swallowed by the dark, we cease to exist. Or do we? According to a Pew survey conducted in 2021, 9 in 10 U.S. adults believe in a higher power. And out of that group, nearly 6 in 10 say they believe in God as described in the Christian Bible. And an additional 1/3 believe there is some other higher power or spiritual force in the universe. I've spent my entire life searching for an answer to life's biggest question. I've studied countless religions, beliefs, and medical and psychological opinions on the subject, looking for an answer that both satisfied my curiosity and quelled my fear. And yet, despite my tireless quest, I'm still left with the same question I started with. What does it mean to die?
That looks
All right.
cool.
Yeah, that was really, really cool. Mr. Ben Harl, Silver Compass Studios. The movie
Hi, guys.
Afterlife.
Hey,
How are
Ben,
you?
welcome.
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's great to see you guys again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Like I was saying earlier, Steve, Ben, it was about 2 years ago that we met? Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty close to 2 years. Yeah.
It was around February, if I remember right. It was wintertime.
Yeah.
What it was is he sent out an email. Ben sent out an email to a lot of people who were in the paranormal field. Wanted to touch base with them and ask some questions about the afterlife, how they felt about certain things. I know you had Mr. Patrick Harrington from Ghostly Podcast on there as well. He's more of a skeptic, but what comes from his mind to his mouth on certain things, is more of a skepticism of death. But it's still an interesting point because everybody has their own idea of what death is.
Right.
Yeah.
How many people did you originally have who were that you interviewed, Ben?
Oh, I mean, we interviewed quite a few people. So I want to say that in the film itself, we probably ended up with probably about 9 or 10 people that kind of made it into the film. And we interviewed people from all kinds of different walks of life. I really wanted to reach out to people who kind of had a foot in that world of the afterlife a little bit. But people who came from, like I said, different walks of life, people who are paranormal investigators like yourself. I talked to past life regression hypnosis therapist, talked to some doctors. I talked to atheists, like Patrick, skeptics, things like that. So I talked to all kinds of different people from all kinds of different walks of life. The subject of the afterlife has been something that has kind of made me curious and frightened me and made me anxious, both kind of at the same time for most of my life. I've struggled with dealing with death, with loved ones and friends my whole life. And it's just something that I've always struggled with. And I've never really had in my life a close affinity to any kind of organized religion. As a matter of fact,
Mhm.
I spent a large portion of my life as an atheist myself. But
Mhm.
as I've gotten older and my own mortality has kind of crept up on me, so to speak, I
Mhm.
decided I kind of wanted to investigate some of these things that I didn't have a rational, what I would call a rational explanation for. And so I kind of went on this journey. And as a filmmaker, I thought, well, if I'm going to go on this personal journey, why not document the journey that I'm going on and
Sure.
capture all of this and share it with other people who may have a similar interest of mine.
That's right. Now, when you were doing this journey, now you said you're an atheist. Like we talked about, Pat's an atheist as well. Um, did you find yourself gathering a little more faith base, that you started believing a little more after listening to
Yeah,
some of the stories? Especially, I know the story, and I'm not trying to single out my story, but I told you in detail a very personal story, and I allowed that for you to film it. Uh, did you find by talking to a lot of people that maybe you started gathering a little more faith in life?
yeah, I kind of did a little bit. I wouldn't say that the spirituality that I kind of found on this journey is conventional to any for any stretch. I wouldn't say that I found Jesus or I found God. The Christian
Mhm.
version of God or the Muslim version of God or whatever the case is. But I definitely found some answers to some questions that I had been looking for a long time. Now, coincidentally, typically when you have questions about spirituality answers, it gives rise to more questions. So I'd say by the end of it, I probably had just as many questions as I started with. They were just different questions. But yeah,
Mhm.
as I went through it, I will say my atheism was kind of tailing off before I started this journey anyway,
Mhm.
because I was having things happen to me in my life that really couldn't be explained, like I said, through conventional methods and means, things like paranormal in nature or
Mhm.
spiritual in nature that I couldn't, it didn't make sense in my brain, so to speak. I actually had kind of two different belief systems in my brain at one time, because
Mhm.
I am a skeptical person. I'm an analytical person. So I always look for the answers to things and I want solid proof for things. That's just the way I've been my whole life. And so I had that half of my brain, and then I had the other half of my brain that saw things that were paranormal and I was exposed to things that were spiritual in nature, and really trying to marry those two things in my brain at the same time. I think is probably what started the journey. I was like, well, obviously I'm not getting the answers that I need going down the conventional route and the analytical route. So let's talk to some people who have some experiences with this and let's see what their answers are. And I have to say that by the end of it, I found that there was a lot of rationale in what a lot of people had to say. That had I not been open minded, I probably wouldn't have listened to as clearly
Mhm.
as I ended up doing when I went on this journey.
Okay, Steve, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, this is a journey I think everybody goes on, and we don't really talk about too much.
Yeah.
You might talk about it uh, if you have like people who share the same faith, and in certain situations, somebody dies. You might sit down with your cousin who you haven't seen in a while and talk about that, right? But it's not something you go to grocery store stand like, go, hey, what do you think about like death? We go
Yeah.
security, security.
Yeah.
But we all have this conversation with ourselves. One of the unique things about being human is that we have this knowing of what's going to happen, and you get to a certain age where you get closer and closer. Your brain's more developed. You can start thinking about things a lot more in a complex way, and then there's an emotion that sometimes crawls into it.
Yeah.
Very almost panic can sometimes set in when you have this. Uh, realization that you're going to die.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
might not be now. It might be, like I'm 50 something. I stopped counting because what's the point? um, but every day is a day closer, right? And but I don't wake up and have a panic attack about it. And that's because of a spiritual journey, much like the one that you had. I think we, we can resist going on that spiritual journey. Okay, and asking
Oh
these
yeah.
questions
Yeah.
and dealing with it. And I think it doesn't do us any good. I think it just results in a lot of mental, emotional dissonance, noise, confusion, and
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear about your journey. And because we talk to people, who have had near death experiences, um,
Hmm.
and they'll tell us a little bit about it. And they have like a commonality to them, And then the white tunnel, seeing their
Hmm.
body, um, feeling a presence of something very loving,
Hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
and not wanting to come back. and
Yeah.
these are the near death experienced people who came back, and they're like, no, I want to stay.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, and so yeah, it's very curious. It's comforting too to hear that, but
Yeah.
confusing too, right? Because you have people here that you love, you have family, you have friends, you have your commitments, you have dreams, you have things that you want to do, and to think that something horrible could happen, at least you think it's horrible, but then you don't want to come back. You want to leave all that behind and join this thing in the sky, whatever it might be. It's hard, it's
It's a
almost
serial
impossible
realm.
for an atheist to consider as something that could be real for them. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I'll
Ben,
stop
Yeah.
talking.
Oh,
go
it's
ahead.
okay. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting, talking to all these different people because generally, like you said, I think going on this type of a spiritual journey and talking to people from different walks of life and different faiths is crucial and so important to each of us to go on. And I think a lot of people sometimes are maybe, I don't want to say denial, but maybe a little bit in fear that their belief systems will be shaken and doubt will kind of enter into their spirit when they go on these types of journeys and when they're investigating things that are outside of their what they want to believe. And what I found actually is that's usually not the case. Usually if you have somebody that's, say, a staunch Christian or a staunch atheist or whatever the case is, or a Muslim, whatever. Like, I talked to all kinds of different religious, spiritual faiths during this journey, and um, it was really the thing that I find the most interesting is that the people who actually go on these journeys more often than not end up going back to their original faith and
Mm,
feeling stronger in that original faith because they went on that journey. So it strengthened their beliefs rather than weakening their beliefs. Um, and the other thing that I found out that was really interesting too is I talked to so many different people, and so many of us are so much more similar in our beliefs
mhm,
than we are different. And if you don't talk to these other faiths and you don't talk to these people who have these other beliefs than whether it's cultural, spiritual, whatever the case is, it's really hard to remember that we're all so similar. I asked everybody that I interviewed, what do you think happens to us after we die? And the answers were so incredibly similar. They were so much more similar than they were different. And the way that people want to live their lives and the positivity that they want to live their lives with, whether they're atheist, spiritual, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever the case is, everybody wants to live their lives in a really profound way that leaves a mark, and they want to live with their loved ones, and they want to love their loved ones and be loved, and they want to have friends, and they want to make an impact on the world, whatever the case. We're so much more similar than we are different. And that was probably one of the biggest takeaways that I took from this journey, was just how much more we are the same and alike than we are different, regardless of what we've been raised to believe.
Hmm.
mhm,
Now, Ben, let me ask you a question.
mhm.
Now, when you were younger, did something traumatic happen to you that you started getting interest in this, the afterlife, or anything paranormal or supernatural?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you asked that question. So I have had things that have happened to me my whole life. Like I said, I've lived with this one half of me being analytical and the other half of me not understanding things. And yeah, and there was a period of several decades of denial, to be honest with you, in my own brain when it came to the spiritual side of things, because I didn't want to believe that those things could exist. Because I couldn't have tangible proof, proof of something that I could have in my hands. But I had all kinds of things happen to me when I was younger that I would consider to be spiritual or paranormal in nature, that I brushed off, that I denied, that I tried to ignore. I actually did some ghost hunting myself in my early 20s. A friend of mine and we started our own little paranormal research company and went out and did some paranormal investigating. Found some things that were really difficult to understand. But
Sure.
again, in that group, I was more like you mentioned Patrick Harrington. I was more the skeptic in that group, trying to find a way to disprove things. But yeah, I mean, I had I had things visit me when I was really young. I've talked to mediums in the past that have said that I've had spirits attached to me. One in particular that protects me and has followed me around through my whole life. The spirit actually has attacked my wife on numerous occasions in the past when she and I have maybe not been getting along so well. So I've had things happen to me that are really, really difficult to explain and understand. And again, it's one of those things that I've just always kind of denied and try to push off and not think about. But as I've gotten older, I've forced myself to kind of look at these things and kind of deal with them. From a spiritual perspective, I was kind of, when I was really young, I wasn't raised in a Christian environment. I wouldn't say that my parents were Christians when I was really young. My parents sent me to Sunday school like every Sunday, but I think it was kind of like babysitting, Hey, we can get rid of the kids for a few hours. They can go to Sunday school and we can relax, kind of thing. But it wasn't until my mother and father got a divorce and we moved and of course that was pretty traumatic for the whole family, and we lived with my mother, and my mother actually became more faith-based at that point. And she became Catholic. I was baptized Catholic along with my sister and my mother at that time. So we kind of became Catholic. I went to Catholic school. And I would say, I hate to say this, because I do have fond memories of my time at Catholic school, but I would say that being in the Catholic religion is probably the thing that pushed me more toward atheism than anything else. Because the way that religion was organized for me personally, I think it's great for the people that it makes sense to, but the way that religion was organized for me, especially in my rebellious teenage years, really kind of turned me off of organized religion quite a bit. And that's really what started me on my journey of atheism for the next several decades.
Now, I can kind of agree with you on that. I'm going to tell you why is because I had a Catholic upbringing as well. And my mom was actually a nun before she left.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, my dad was a brother, and they both left the church, and then they both got jobs, and then they met up sometime later, I hope. So is that my mom and dad, raised us as Catholics, but just like you, I would ask questions, and it's like nobody could truly explain to me the answers, like Old Testament, New Testament. I asked, well, why is it that there was a thought with this one, but not with this one?
Yeah.
And why are we supposed to then follow something if someone was told to us earlier? I'd ask questions like that. And that's when I started really questioning things. It's not that I'm a Catholic. I would say I'm based off of Catholicism, but a Christian. That's what I would more say I am.
Yeah. So I actually kind of have a theory about organized religion now, and I don't know if you guys would agree with this or not, but I think organized religion it's good. It's a good thing for people to have. It strengthens their faith. It makes people, it's community, it's friendship, it's camaraderie. I mean, so there's so many good things about it. So this is no way, shape or form a means of knocking organized religion at all. But after I've been on this journey and I went through my own past life regression hypnosis session that I could tell you guys about, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Things that were on this journey, because I didn't just talk to people. I was like, hey, I want to walk the walk. So I did some stuff that was part of this as well. But what I found after talking to all these people, at the core, all of these religions have so many similarities. Like I was saying, that it seems to me like organized religion is man's bad translation of what true spirituality is. It's the best that we can understand it in our mortal selves. And so the things that we're exposed to that are spiritual, when we come back from those spiritual things, we have to try to find a way to explain it to other people because it's profound and we don't have the words or the means or the way to explain it. And so these organized religions are our best our best effort at explaining something that's really kind of unexplainable in our physical form. That's the way that I kind of define organized religion these days. So it's not necessarily bad. I think it's just some of it's contradictory, some of it's misinformed, and the reason why is because we just can't really explain it what we're seeing very well.
Yeah, and we're supposed to just base it off of faith, and
Yeah.
sometimes faith and sense, they kind of conflict.
Yeah.
But I know, like you're saying, it's about community, the community of the Catholic Church, the people that surround it and go to it. Nice people, great people, love them to death. But once again, do you really believe everything and anything that you were told? I don't know. But that's for each individual's journey. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Being able to put something that's ineffable into words, trying to grasp something that's ungraspable, is that a word?
Yeah.
It it's we can't contain it in our mind. There's no understanding of what's going to happen. We can experience it, and we're all going to, right? There's a difference between thought and discernment, if this makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on your spiritual journey, have you come to that point where your analytical mind has to be put down for a moment, and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and that the discernment comes in? And for me, having an analytical mind and also going on a spiritual journey of my own, and I think they're all personal, right? I love the fact that you documented it. Everybody's going to have a personal spiritual journey. For the analytical mind, I, from my experience, it ended up being okay. Turn that off for a minute. You don't know anything. You can't know anything. You can think you do, and that's all ego, right? Quiet your mind, and then this thing called discernment happens, and you just know.
Mhm.
And you can't put it into words.
Yeah.
You can't explain it, but you know, at least in my experience, that there's something after this. There's something before it.
Yeah,
You
I'm a big believer. There is and I explained it in your movie, what I believe it is, and I'll leave it for the audience to check out the movie to hear what I had to say. Um, one of the other questions I have for you is, out of all the people that you went to, now this is from a paranormal investigator researcher point of view. You go to all these people's houses and you meet them up in certain places. Did anything happen oddly inside someone's home, or when you went to go meet them during an interview or right after the interview, that links something together that you guys talked about?
Oh, certainly, yeah. So it didn't happen in somebody's home. Believe it or not, it happened in a restaurant of all things. So one of the young women that I interviewed, she's a doctor of Eastern medicine. Her name's Sandra Subotic, Dr. Sandra Subotic. Wonderful young lady, very very eager to speak about these types of things. Very intelligent, but she also is a medium as well as practicing Eastern medicine. And so we did the interview with her, and then we were doing what we call B-roll, which is kind of behind the scenes camera work. And part of that was me doing acupuncture and cupping therapy. As one of the things that I wanted to do. I'd never done acupuncture before. And I thought, well, heck, if I'm here and, and I can do it, I'll check it out. So we did all of that. And then when we got done, where she works, where she practices medicine at, they have a lobby on the first floor, and they have a restaurant inside there. And we got done around lunchtime. So my camera operator and I were like, well, we'll just eat lunch here in the lobby before we go on to the next interview. So we get on and we're eating lunch, and we're, maybe halfway through lunch, and here comes Dr. Subotic, and she's barrels into the restaurant, looking left and right, looking for us everywhere. And she sees us, and she makes a beeline for the table. And she's like, oh, I'm so glad you guys are still here. I know you said you were going to eat lunch here, and I had to catch you. She said, I actually was in with my next patient, and I actually had to cut it early because your grandfather showed up, and he wouldn't leave me alone until I came down here and gave you a message from him about, your life, your upbringing, and your relationship that you had with him growing up. So she sat down while we were eating our lunch, and she explained to me what my grandfather looked like, what he was wearing. She explained to me his personality type. And then she told me some personal information about him and my upbringing that, I I don't know. Could she have found that information through conventional means? Maybe, but I mean, it's really highly doubtful. I mean, what he looked like and stuff. I mean, you could find that through genealogy records and stuff, but there's no way that she would know, the type of relationship that I had with a man when he was alive. Um, and the final message that my grandfather wanted to give me through her was that the afterlife was not what he expected it to be. It was vastly different. He
Mhm.
wished he would have known that while he was alive, because he would have lived his life in a different way had he known that. My grandfather was a stern Christian man when he was alive.
Mm.
And I took that to mean that he thought that it was, afterlife was going to be in a very conventional type of afterlife, conventional Christian afterlife, and that, what he found after he died, that it was not. And he really, really wanted to convey that to me through her.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
I
mean,
wish I would have gotten that on camera, but we were in the middle of a restaurant. It was noisy and we were eating, so I didn't that actually didn't make it into the film, but that was a very, very poignant part of the journey.
yeah. I mean, she
So
was.
when Mhm.
Go ahead, Steve. I'm sorry.
I just have a question. When she told you that, so there's a part of your mind that's probably thinking analytically about it, right?
Oh, of course,
How
yeah,
did you
yeah.
know it? And the part of you that the discerning part, I can see by how you reacted and you're telling the story that you're lit up and you're like you knew that was true. What she was saying.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have a way to explain it in an analytical or a
Hmm.
logical fashion,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean that it can't be true. And I do want to say that too, because you talked a lot about being analytical yourself, and
Hmm.
I think that's probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned through this journey was I talked to quite a few folks, and I had a couple of them tell me, in particular, a couple of them tell me, look, because I would ask them, people who are analytical, like you and I'd ask them, how do you marry this? How do you make this make sense in your head? How do you deny
Hmm.
one and then turn it? How do you turn it on and off? And one of them ended up telling me, they said, you don't, and
Hmm.
you don't have to.
Hmm.
Both of those things can exist in your mind at the same time and be profound and be accurate and be truthful. You don't have to turn that off. One doesn't have to contradict the other.
Hmm.
You can believe it, and I had never thought about it like that before. And it wasn't like believing both at the same time. The way that they explained it and the way that I took their explanation of it was more to say, just because my analytical mind can't explain it doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means it's not yet proven, and it's
Hmm.
okay to believe in something that's not yet proven. And you don't have to have proof in order to believe it. Yeah, and that's kind of where
Right.
faith comes in, and that's something that I've always struggled with. But the way that they explained it to me, that both of those can coexist in my brain at the same time, for
Hmm.
whatever reason, it clicked finally in me, and it's made it a lot easier for me to deal with, I guess.
Yeah, like we
Hmm.
say, you struggle with like the faith part. See, a lot of people don't realize is that we're only human.
Yeah,
Okay, one minute we're feeling so good about our strong faith in something, and then next minute someone just ticks us off, and then we just get angry. We yell at someone, and then they'll go to you. Well, where was your strong faith of saying, "Hey, oh, you're going to pass. You're not. You're going to, be nice to everybody." We're all just human in this journey, part of this thing. And faith does come and go on people. And like I told you the story about my wife, for those who don't know, and you're going to see it in there, I actually started really guessing things about faith. But when my wife was, like really close to something,
Hmm.
where I really got panicky about,
Hmm.
something happened, and you can check it. I think it's in your movie.
it
Uh,
is. Yeah,
and I explain it, and the overwhelming feeling that I had of that everything's going to be okay when I was in this panic, and this man comes up to me. He wants to pray with me, and at first I just want to say, you know what, get away from me, dude, leave me alone. You see, I'm being bothered right now. But when he put his hand on my arm,
Hmm.
there was something very, very strong that happened, and it's really it does make your faith much stronger. I understand there you have your atheists out there who say, "Oh, why can't this happen to me? Why can't this happen to me?" And I get it. I don't know. I don't know when it's your turn, when you're supposed to pull your ticket. But I can't tell a lot of people this. This is just from Neil saying this. Is that I believe that we're all going to be at a certain point in our lives where we're going to put forth the question because we're going to be so emotionally drained or we need help. And that's when I believe that something is going to happen for an individual. And everybody can agree or disagree. It's totally up to you. But that's my belief, is that these things are out there because I've felt them before. And
Are you saying when the student's ready, the teacher will appear?
maybe so. Maybe I should get all theatrical and say that. Yeah. I don't know.
Yes. It's good for views. Not kidding.
Good for you. But it is amazing. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, I understand. I know I'm not a perfect individual, but when it does happen, man, it is an amazing feeling. It really is weird. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, and wait for people to see the movie on that. One other question I do have for you, Ben. Now, this is going to sound kind of like a weird question. Maybe I don't even know.
All right.
I don't even know if it's a good question. But did anybody, since filming this, did anyone pass?
No. Everybody that's been in the film actually is still alive and kicking. So,
I mean, it's good, but I was just
yeah.
To see.
Yeah. What's interesting is, I did try to find a couple of people that had terminal illnesses to interview, because I thought that their perspective would be an important one. But I didn't have much luck with it, simply because that's such a tough subject to bring up to somebody who's going through quite literally the most profound thing that they're going to experience in their entire life. And so I knew a couple people who were terminally ill, and one of them since passed, actually, that I had approached about being in the film. But it's such a touchy subject. You have to be very careful. I don't want to sit down and try to make it sound like I'm going to exploit what somebody's going through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just never got any luck finding a way. It was on me. It was my fault. I didn't find a way to be able to approach somebody going through something like that and actually broach the subject with them in a way that could have been positive. It was just,
Right.
And then of course my fear of death too, didn't help matters either. So it just seemed like such a touchy subject. It was so hard to think about sitting down with somebody and asking them questions, knowing for sure that they were on that edge.
Right. I mean, it would be an awesome thing if somebody would actually sign off on allowing a researcher like myself, a filmmaker like you, to be allowed in someone's household where they're on hospice, and you're able to monitor it to see if you can actually catch something happening, maybe the ethereal umbilical cord, something on camera, something off our EVPs, catching an electronic voice phenomenon, something. And I think that would actually be a great part two.
There's actually an article that I read during my research, and I'm going to botch this because I don't have it in front of me to reference, but there is an article where there was somebody that was having a medical procedure done. I want to say it was an MRI, but it was some kind of imaging procedure that they were having done, and they died during the procedure. It was the first time that anybody had recorded somebody dying, and they actually saw things that they could not explain happening to the person while they were dying through that process that they actually were able to capture through the imaging. I would tell everybody to Google it, with the subject line, and you'll be able to find it pretty easily. I wish I could remember the exact subject or the exact article myself,
I know.
But it's out there.
There's many stories like that of especially people who are nurses and doctors. They see, and like they have like an analytical mind, like you're saying, but they can't dispute things when things are put right in front of them. When all of a sudden you actually have these people who die and then come back, and they talk about everybody in a room where mom was seated out in the waiting room, where dad was sitting out in the waiting room. He was eating a Snickers bar with a can of Coca-Cola.
Yep.
These are real stories. How are you able to do that? is the spirit a real thing? Me personally, I know it is. I'm not saying it is. I know it is. I know it is. I know that me inside, I am me. This is just the frame of our body. And I know each and every day that you wake up, you look at that blue sky up into the nighttime, and you see those stars. There's more to us. There's so much more to us. And I believe that each and every one of us has our own spiritual journey that we're on.
And the question
Well, and
is,
the
have you
interesting
ever
thing
been?
too. Go
Have
ahead.
you ever been another person? Because I want to get to your
Oh,
past life regression.
yeah.
Oh yeah, we gotta
Um,
get to that. Yeah.
yeah. So I'll tell you about that, because that was, I had two very, very profound experiences during this journey. One of them I'll talk about, and the other one is kind of personal, so I kept it to myself.
That's fine. I
Okay.
understand.
But the past life regression hypnosis session I can certainly talk about. A gentleman by the name of Adam Dentz. He's a Reiki healer and a past life regression hypnosis specialist. And I interviewed him and got to know him pretty well, actually, through the interview process. And he did a past life regression hypnosis session on me, and I have it on film. So, and I wanted to film it. It actually took about 90 minutes. So, not very much of the actual hypnosis session made it into the film, because it's basically just looks like I'm asleep in a chair for the most part. So, it's not the best thing to view.
Right.
But I wanted to film it. Well, number one, because I didn't know how much I want in the film. And then number two, I wanted a record of my hypnosis, because I wanted to be able to go back and see, because I've never been hypnotized before. Adam Dentz did it. And so I wanted to be able to see my, that analytical brain. I wanted to be able to go back and analyze it and see, did he ask me leading questions? Did he point me in certain directions? And I didn't know if I would be able to know that under hypnosis. So, we did his interview, we did all of his footage and everything. And then after that, we did the past life regression hypnosis session. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how to explain through conventional means what I saw. I will tell you that I did end up in two different lives, and I went into the afterlife and was born from the afterlife into my second life. And then I died in the second life as well. So the first life, I was an older gentleman and I was murdered. And I very distinctly remember I was in a barn, and this is very, very clear in my mind even now. And I did a video recap, and I have all of the stuff documented just to make sure I wouldn't forget it. But I didn't. I ended up not needing it because it's so vivid in my brain. But I remember I was in a barn and I was shot. I was killed in a barn. I fell, and when I fell, I got shot in the chest. And when I fell on my back, and I floated up out of my body, and I flipped over, and I could see my body, and I could see the murderer standing over my body. And I floated up out of the top of the barn. And I remember exactly what the barn looked like. I remember what it smelled like. I remember what color the grass was. I remember what time of night it was. I remember what the house next to the barn looked like. All of this is extremely vivid in my brain. And I floated up, and then I flipped back over, and I look into the sky, and there's this swirling mass in the sky. And there's all these white lights that are flitting into this swirling mass. It's almost like a spiral, like an upside down tornado. And it's, all these things are getting brought into it, and I got sucked into it. And when I got sucked into it, I got spit out into what just looked like space, for lack of a better way of explaining. Again, like I said earlier, we do a very poor job of explaining what we see as human beings because it transcends our ability to explain. But and as far as I could see, there were these egg-shaped, like translucent egg-shaped orbs, and they had this like umbilical style cord tethered to them, and it was tethered down to the ground, I would assume, or something. But I could see space, and I could see these things, what I would assume tethered to the ground, and they were like blades of grass. As far as the eye could see, there were trillions upon trillions of them. And I floated down toward them. And when I did, I saw that the eggs, from my perception, they looked like they were, probably 3 foot tall, maybe 1.5 feet wide. And there was a fetus inside each of them. And I floated into one of the orbs, and as soon as I did, it flipped again, and I was seeing through the eyes of the fetus that was inside of the orb. And then it flashed again, and when it flashed again, I was in another life, and I was actually on a picnic with my wife and my children in this other life on property. Again, I remember the children's laughing. I remember what they looked like. I remember what my wife looked like. I remember the blanket that we were sitting on at the picnic. I remember what the water looked like on the creek that was running in front of us. I remember the house off in the distance. I remember all of this stuff. So I saw that scene, and then I flashed forward and I saw another scene where I was in front of a schoolhouse that had just been built. So it was like a grand opening of a schoolhouse. And it had horses and buggies in front of it, but it also had like really old style Model A, Model T cars in front of it as well. So, and it was dirt roads leading up to it. So nothing was paved. It was an old brick building, and it was like a grand opening. And I remember that. I remember the dust from the cars and all of that. And then I flashed forward again, and this time I was an old man in that life, and I was actually in a bed in that schoolhouse. And the schoolhouse had been transformed into a cholera hospital. So I was in a schoolroom in the schoolhouse on the second or third floor. I don't know which it was, but I remember looking out the window, and I could tell that I was up high. And I remember the nurses coming up, and one of the nurses could tell I was restless. She was patting my hand and telling me that I was going to be okay. And I remember the chalkboard being in there, and I remember there were bookshelves under the like most schoolhouses have the big long bay of windows. And I remember there being short bookshelves underneath the window. So I could tell it was a schoolroom, but there were several beds in it. So it looked like the schoolhouse had been turned into some kind of an emergency hospital for cholera. And then while she's patting my hand and she's talking to me about all this stuff, trying to calm me down, I died again. I died in that life because I was old and I died of cholera. But from that point, I didn't go back into the afterlife. From that point, I woke up, and then the hypnosis session was over.
Let me ask you this. Through going through all that, did you go through a lot of different emotions?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, during my hypnosis session, I went through a wide range of emotions. I almost felt like I was a different person.
Exactly. So
let me
rephrase the whole question. Did you go through a whole bunch of emotions, and were any of these emotions feeling new to something you've never felt before in the life that you lead now? And did you have a hard time dealing with these emotions after the hypnosis factor?
Oh yeah, certainly. So yeah, every both of those lives that I lived, and I know I didn't go into great detail in the first life that I mentioned, but there was some detail there as well. But we don't have to go into that right now. But yeah, each of those different lives that I visited during that hypnosis session, I felt like two completely different people. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting because I felt like I was that person, but I also felt like I was me observing what was going on in that life at the same time. So I felt like I was two people. And then of course, so I felt their emotions. I felt my emotions based on their emotions, what they were going through. The only time that I actually felt where I didn't feel that duality was when I was in that afterlife or that transitional period. At that point, I felt completely like myself. I didn't feel like there was any duality there at all at that point. And then, of course, when I came out of the hypnosis session, I mean, you could probably ask my cameraman. We had a long. He lives in Minnesota and I live in Illinois, so we had about an 8-hour drive home, and we rode home. And I was really silent for about the first 3 hours of the trip. He was like, "Hey, man, are you okay? You're not talking." And I was like, "Man, I'm just trying to figure this out." I mean, he watched the whole thing, but he's analytical too, so he's watching it and he's not really going through the experience, so he's not as invested as me. But but he's like, "Man, are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm not okay. I don't know how to comprehend what I just witnessed. I'm going through all these emotions. For whatever reason, I felt a lot of anger. Right after I got out of the hypnosis session, I felt really angry for some reason. And I don't know why I felt angry at that point, but I felt angry pretty much the rest of that day.
Did you feel
angry
lost,
and
like a deep loss?
No, it wasn't a loss so much. I guess upon further thought of it, I would say that I think maybe some of the reason why I was angry had to do with that was the first time that my analytical and skeptical thought process had been challenged that aggressively. And I have to say, maybe the anger was like a defense mechanism. It was my analytical mind trying to say, hey, trying to figure out a way to deal with seeing something that I absolutely had no way to explain other than spiritual.
Right.
That's the only thing I can think that made me angry, because none of the experience, while I was going through the experience, I had no anger at all. It was just a sense of, I mean, I had their emotions of the, the lives, but my own, like in the duality, my own brain, it was just wonderment and awe at what I was seeing.
Okay.
So that anger
So,
was your anger and
oh
not
yeah,
residual anger
yeah,
from some
that
other life.
I would,
Okay.
that's my interpretation of it.
Okay.
I don't think I had anything residual stay with me. But I will tell you, I mean, after that, my dreams became more vivid.
Mm.
I felt less locked into my own life after that. And I mean, listen, I'm analytical. Like I said, I scoured the internet trying to look for proof of both of these lives.
Mhm.
I would very much like to do another hypnosis session to see if I can find something that is provable and concrete. Unfortunately, I mean, even though I could, my senses were overloaded with all of this stuff,
Mhm.
details like street names and people's names and
Yeah.
things like that. I didn't get any of that, of course. So, I mean, I searched for hours looking for schoolhouses turned into cholera hospitals in the early 20th century. But I didn't even know what country it was. I mean, it could have been
Mhm.
Australia, it could have been England, it could have been the United States. I have no way of knowing because I didn't catch those kinds of details.
Yeah, I think if
So,
I was to
Right.
do that from listening to what you said, if I was to do a hypnosis session, I would also ask him to ask certain questions, like while we're
yeah,
talking about this, give me the name of the street, give me the city, da da da.
yeah, yeah,
I just from listening to you,
But even if
go
it
ahead.
kind of going back to what you said earlier with the analytical mind, and the spiritual side of you or the knowing part of you, um, just because one thing can't be answered, right? Or you might say these street names, maybe got a street name, maybe got a name of the city, you got the name of the person, and you go and look for it, and this person didn't exist. Still doesn't mean that it wasn't valid, because then
right.
you get into like the possibility that there can be more places than here to be alive in.
Yeah, and that's something to think about too. I mean, and that leans into more analytical thinking. If you think about
Hmm.
multiple universes,
Hmm.
multiverses, and you think about we're not traveling through time in a linear fashion or an A to B fashion, but we're traveling side to side through multiple universes, and there's multiple
Hmm.
us's living in multiple times and multiple space. I mean, so
Fragment
all of
life.
that is complete, yeah, and all of that's completely possible. And if you get deep into mathematics and theory, you can see where a lot of that stuff, if it's not provable, it's at least possible.
Sure.
Right.
And that I find very interesting as well. And I think that leans itself towards some of the spiritual way that we think. I mean, one of the folks that I interviewed said, I can't remember who said it right now off the top of my head, but one of them said that science and spirituality used to be a lot closer together. And it's
Hmm.
just been in the last few hundred years that we've separated science and spirituality to be independent of one another. And now maybe we're starting to see that gap closing again as science is catching up to where maybe spirituality already was. We
Hmm.
just,
I'm in big agreement with that. I'm in a huge agreement with that. I believe that people's spirituality is. I think we're having a second. Um, what was in the 1890s, 1880s? Spiritual awakening,
yes, yeah,
and we had those sisters who were rapping on the door. What was their name, Steve? Do you remember? And I believe that we're going to be on the dawn of a second spiritual awakening. I really do believe that. I believe because of the things that are going on in the world, that we're going to have some kind of, and I already see it.
Well,
Because
that's
you
the
have all
thing
these
right there
shows that are
too.
out there. We have your movie that's coming out about it,
Yeah.
and the more media that we have about this, the more the minds start opening up.
And that
So,
gets into
yeah,
the discernment of it, right? If you ask uh, anybody who's paying attention, people discern something is just a little different about these times. There's something happening.
there is something.
Uh,
yeah,
right.
There's a fact,
You can't put in words. We can't know we don't have any way of like really knowing for sure every detail about it, but something's happening. You
oh
can
yeah,
discern it.
that's happened.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, do you have any final questions
Yeah,
for?
no, I absolutely do about the hypnosis regression. You
Yeah.
don't go into anything that like you don't that's personal and everything, but this is a question I have because we've interviewed people who have been gone through past life regression. I have a little bit of a hypnosis background myself. I help people quit smoking, but I've been in rooms with people who do past life regression and hear them talk about it and everything. One of the things that happens often, maybe not all the time, but often enough to get me wondering, is in your past life regression, did you recognize anybody in your current life? Maybe they're not in the same body, maybe they're not, but did you recognize a soul?
I did not.
Okay,
I'd love to say that I did, but
right.
Good
I
question.
didn't. That's an excellent question, and I think, and that's some of the reason why I want to do it again is because
Mhm,
when I did this, I went into it uh, surprisingly open minded, being analytical and leaning toward atheism at the point. When I did it, I went into it surprisingly open minded, but I went into it. I kind of like just told myself, hey, if you're going to do this, just blank page your brain so you can absorb all of this information, as much of it as you can, be as
mhm,
open minded as you can, or it may not work. So I just kind of shut my analytical brain off. And
mhm.
so I think the next time that I do it, now that I know what to expect, I think I can probably lead myself to things, to notice things that I didn't notice this last time, because I have
Yeah,
an expectation of what it's going to be like.
I want to say something, but I don't want it to be like a hypnotic suggestion. So I'm
All
kind
right.
of like, um, but sometimes when we remember being murdered, the
Yeah.
murderer, um, and you are entwined in
I've
some
heard that.
way,
I've heard that.
and that might be a person. It could be your mom who murdered you, but she was a man.
Yeah.
Be your wife. Usually, it is the wife,
There you go. That's a good.
but there's like this little thing that happens where we have like a soul partner or soul group and all that. So when we talk about death and we talk about what happens after life, the question is, what is life? And if we do share this experience, there's, I think, another chapter of this because we're going on the spiritual journey of ourself. What is death? But if you get into like, oh, wait, not only do we come back, but sometimes we recognize other people, then there's much more to the story. There's like what is it? Because what is the afterlife? Kind of goes begs to then ask, what is life? If we're
What is
coming
life?
back
Yeah.
and sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
I
it?
have to say my final takeaway from the entire journey that I went on, and I hope that it's conveyed in the film. That was certainly my intention toward the end of it. But my final takeaway from all of it was just how much of a gift our life is,
Mm,
and how important it is for us to enjoy our life and not get bogged down in the day to day, and not get so wrapped up in anger and closed mindedness and defensiveness, and don't get so wrapped up in the tiny little bit of differences that we all share, and become more involved in the similarities that we all share. um, Having a sense of community and forgiveness and understanding and patience, that's really the biggest message that I got from this journey.
Good, good. All right, Ben. That's Mr. Ben Harl with Silver Compass
yeah.
Studios. His movie coming out on the 27th of February. Why don't you tell us all about
Yes.
it? Why don't you tell us all
Yeah,
about it?
so I partnered with a wonderful distribution company called Bayview Entertainment. They've been very wonderful to work with. So we are going to have a streaming release on February 27th of the film. I'm not exactly sure which streaming services it's going to be released on today. I'm hoping to find out here in a few weeks when we get closer to the actual release date. But the plan is for it to be released on several streaming sites. So it should be widely available after February 27th.
Right. And Ben is on Facebook under Silver Compass
Mhm.
Studios. He also has a website, Silver Compass Studios, as well. So you can keep that. And we're also going to put it out there when you have a breakdown. We'll put it out there. We'll advertise for you. Because
Wonderful.
I want to see you become very successful with this. I want to see
Oh,
success.
thank you very much. And
Yeah.
thank you for your help, Neil. It was wonderful to interview you and meet you and get to know you. Thank you for sharing the personal journeys that you went on for this project. It was wonderful to be able to share that with the folks that
Yeah.
I mean, we already did a local premiere. You know, we actually sold out our local theater when we did our premiere,
Wow.
which was wonderful. And so there's already been a few hundred people that have got to see the film on a local level. And you know, I think a lot of people keyed in on a lot of what you had to say when they watched it. So thank you for
good. That's good. The main thing is whenever I do anything, I'm a big believer. If I have a moment to talk to people, to try to always give something positive. And whatever I do in life, I'm a big believer in that. If I have a moment in time, I want to share it with somebody. So once again, Ben, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the Paranormal Guys podcast. Steve, you got anything to say?
Oh, thank you, Ben. This has been an amazing conversation. I'm very interested in what happens in the afterlife, but I'm in no hurry to find out.
it. Sure, yeah. Watch the film. You may find out a little bit, but I agree with you. I'm not in any hurry to find out permanently what happens. So
Neither am
I'll take my time.
Neither am I. And boys and girls, just like always, boo.
Boo.